this is not what I signed up for. And I knew that's kind of the first moment where I really experienced what it means to have like integrity, to be like, this is not the path I want. I want the advance. I want the money. I want to be in the studio. I want all of this, but I know you're always going to be trying to fit me into this box. And he made it very clear he wanted me to fit into that box. Thank you for that. And so when I walked away from it, it was back at square one.
Can you imagine having to go on 600 auditions before you land your breakthrough role? Oh, well, in this episode, I am joined by comedic actress Skye Townsend, who is breaking down her journey. That was exactly what happened to her on her way to a Black Lady sketch show and the real hustle behind balancing laughs, characters, and career longevity. If this is your first time here, my name is Lydia Nicole, and this is Acting Smarter Now. In 1833, there was an English actor who said, dying is easy, comedy is hard. He said this on his deathbed. So I want to know, Skye, what does comedy mean to you?
Do you know I've never been asked that? I've never been asked that ever. Wow, in comedy, it is hard. You know, for me, the way that I look at comedy is survival. I think the older we get, life just gets harder. It just gets more complicated. It gets more layered. And for me, the way I look at it is like, comedy is literally the way I get through my day. So beyond what I do, if I don't laugh at a situation, I'll lose my mind. So if it's, a nail in my tire, if it's, tripping on the side of the street, like I look at that as a way to survive in my day-to-day life. So being able to do it for a living is great, but I think it's the only way that I can process how life starts to shift the older we get.
It's good therapy. What don't you consider comedy?
To me, I think if you're only funny, if you're mean, if you're cussing like way too much, if like somebody is the butt of the joke, I think that's cheap. I don't really look at that as like quality comedy. I think if you walk into a room and somebody's afraid that you're going to make the meanest joke ever, I don't consider that comedy. I think if you can be funny without any of the extras, that is true comedy. If the skill alone, if the storytelling, if the voices, if the delivery, if that is funny, I think that is comedy without, cheap, making fun of somebody or, cussing every other word or being loud, right? Like I think some people think by being extremely loud, it's funny, when in reality, if you took the volume away, would we still laugh, right? So I think like the material is really what it's about. And I think some people get distracted with the bells and whistles.
I love that. I want to go back. You are an early proponent of content creation. You started doing content. How old were you?
I was 13.
What made you say, I'm going to put on a camera and I'm going to start doing sketches. I'm going to start talking to the internet. I'm just going to go.
I don't know. I think, YouTube was like new at that point. It was like skateboarding videos and like the most random things. There was literally like such a small amount of videos on YouTube at that point that everybody just wanted to try. They were like, I'm kind of curious if I, posted a video of me painting or a video doing a voice. And so I was already doing that in the mirror. And so I figured, why not record it? I am a big believer in talking to yourself. I think that so much of my skill has developed from talking in the mirror for hours and hours. So I said, let me just try on camera and see how people respond. And that would be the real test if this is funny or not. Right? You find out the truth when you put it out there. And so it was kind of amazing because it was all these voices and things that I'd been doing since I was a kid.
Yes. I don't think a lot of people know you from the Black Lady sketch show and the neighborhood, but not a lot of people know that you got a recording contract was it 13?
I was 16, maybe?
16.
I was 16, yeah.
16. And that before you got the recording contract, you actually had more than one record company wanting to sign you. So you were doing the sketches. You started on YouTube?
Yes.
Was it YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube, Vine. There was a lot of like platforms going at the same time. And so you could even upload the same videos multiple places and just see where it picked up. But it was mostly, YouTube, Vine. And I'd sing a little bit on there. And I guess labels were online like, we got to find somebody somewhere. And so I think I'm doing funny videos. And then I'm getting an email from Atlantic and I'm like, this is fake. I know I'm being finessed. This is fake. And then I realized I was like, they're scouting on these apps. Like you never know who is watching, which is a whole nother thing, right? That's
something I want to bring into this part of the conversation is that you have taken your craft serious, because even though you were in front of the mirror, even though
yes.
you were doing stuff in front of the mirror, I remember you going to singing lessons at like 11 years old, that you were really serious about, I got to learn how to do this. Because a little kid doesn't usually say, I want to take classes. What was it? Because you're a driven young lady. You have been a driven young lady since you came out of your mama's womb. So what was it that made you go, I want to take singing lessons?
Ooh, I think like it's really interesting because at a very early age, I understood what it looked like when somebody did their homework. Like I knew what it looked like when somebody was kind of good at what they did. And then I was like, oh, that's somebody who practiced. And I was fascinated with the concept of being great at what I do. And so I think for a while, not I don't know if it was arrogance, it might have been arrogance, but I thought that God-given talent will get you to where you need to go. So I was kind of hesitant to sharpen it. I was just like, well, I'm the best singer in my class, and I didn't realize there's other classes, right? there's other schools. So you're the hottest thing in 6th grade, Miss Thing, but you meet a better singer than you and you go, oh wait, hold on, I got so comfortable, right? Like I thought this will take me to exactly where I need to go. When in reality, hard work beats talent if talent's not working hard, right? So I was like, okay, great singers are taking lessons. Like Beyonce would be running on the treadmill singing the national anthem. Like all of the greats that I loved kept talking about how much they studied, and I wasn't really studying. So I think at that point, it was a wake-up call for me because I really thought natural talent was enough. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
You have to sharpen it or your gift kind of remains in the same spot your whole life.
So your father is Robert Townsend, and
Yes.
people know him as an icon, but they don't know him as a poppager.
Yes.
And your father has been very poppager for you, as
Oh, yeah.
far as being on top of you, and you're like, leave me alone, leave me alone.
Oh, yeah.
How
Get off.
it's wonderful and it's annoying at the same time, because you're trying to figure things out, and then here's a grown up who's saying, don't do it this way, do it this way. How have you balanced taking the information that is being given to you, right, taking the direction and weighing it out and go, okay, yeah, this works, or
Yeah.
I think I want to do it this way? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot to be said about having mentors. And
Mhm.
at some point, how do you know that doesn't feel good in my spirit?
Mm-hmm. Oof. I think, it's the best thing he could have given me was brutal honesty. I think, I thought I was better than I was at a lot of ages, and I was quickly humbled by him. But I think it was great because a lot of people, look at their kids and they can't give adjustments, right? They're just like, she wears her bangs just like me, and they just cannot see past it. He was tough since day one. I mean, I'd be 9 years old doing a voice, and he'd be like, what is that supposed to be? I'm like, it's British. And he's like, okay, but is it Cockney? Is it posh? It's sloppy? And I'm like, who says this to a child? But in his head, he's like, if you're going to be great, you need to know that there's multiple accents. If you're going to say this is a Spanish accent, where are they from? You know what I mean? Are you a Puerto Rican from the Bronx, or are you, in Mexico? Are you in Argentina? Like he was like, you're not doing enough homework. You're just thinking that this sloppy voice change is enough. And so I think the brutal honesty allowed me to dig really deep, because I was like, if this is what he thinks, other people might agree. Like this might be what a casting director has to say. This might be what a director, and as much as I fought it, he'd be right. So it's like, I wanted him to be wrong, but it always came up that it was correct. And so I think the brutal honesty was really hard to digest, because I knew what I was attempting to do, but I had no real experience, right? I just, in my head, it felt good, but he's like, right, but if you can step outside of yourself, this can be adjusted and this can be tweaked. So it's always been a battle, because I think his honesty is so brutal that I would fight it for so many years. And then a few years would pass and he'd be correct. And I was like, so now I take it with a grain of salt. I might need like 24 hours to process it and go pout. And then I'll be like, okay, he's correct. But But I think, yeah, being able to say when something needed work was great, because I have a lot of friends whose parents are in the industry, and they think their kids just sprouted from the sea and the ocean and they are made of flowers, and they're not growing in their gift because of that, because their parents can't see it. They really think, oh my God, the most tone deaf singer in the world, but that's my baby. It's like, you would help her more if you told her get into lessons. So I think long term it has really helped me, but it was hard. I was like, you think you know everything, and I didn't realize how much he had under his belt, to where I was like, you might know a lot. So that's where I'm at.
I hate the term nepo baby. I think
Yeah, me too.
I think it's disrespectful. I think it's something that's usually just given to people in show business. Like in other professions, if your father's a carpenter, he teaches you to be a carpenter. If your mother is a chef, she teaches you how to be a chef, and it is passed down generation to generation. But in entertainment, we don't give room for the child of the the celebrity, the actor, the musician to grow and develop and be their own person. I admire the fact that you have been your own person. It's like, yep, that's my dad. Okay, and this is what I want to do, and I'm gonna do this, and that you really took. And I want to take a moment with this, because we don't speak on it enough in a positive way. That you were not sitting there going, well, that's my dad, so hire me. That you really went and said, okay, I'm gonna create this. I'm gonna create this. You were fearless as a preteen, as a teenager, that something in you was like, okay, I'm gonna be unstoppable. And that has been your spirit, to be unstoppable, to keep going. And as a child of a famous person, you wanting to be in the same profession um, can be hurtful, in that people want to see you so they can talk about you. They'll bring you in the room and then they'll tear you down.
Mhm.
How have you handled that as you've been going along the way? Because again, we go back to, you started at 13, putting on your camera, doing your stuff. At that age, kids are just discovering their voice, or trying to discover their voice. So you're discovering your voice. You got this dad who has this big old shadow, and people are looking at you going, oh God, oh God, here we go again. And yet your spirit didn't let it dampen you, diminish you, or destroy you. Talk about your teenage years as an
Wow.
artist.
It's interesting, because I started auditioning, I think I was 17. And what I started to quickly realize, because you hear the like Nepo baby thing, and you're going to get the part just because you're so and so's kid. I would start auditioning for my dad's friends, but they had so much respect for him that they were like, she's not ready. Like, we're not going to put her in a position that she's not ready for. And so I wouldn't say it was working against me, because long term it made me way better, but it didn't work in my benefit at first. I must be honest. I feel like a lot of people were trying to test me or put different hurdles in the way, to be like, well, if your dad's done it, wouldn't you know what that is? Or if I had a question, I'd be very vulnerable, like, I don't know what that is. Wow, the Townsend's daughter doesn't know what that is. And it's like, it was a really condescending, bizarre energy, because I was going in so green. And they expected me to know more than I did. And if I had questions, there was, always a weird response. But early years, I think it was just, like I said, yeah, I met a lot of his friends, but I realized very quickly that the respect for who he is was not going to allow them to give me a shortcut. They were like, it doesn't matter, tell your dad I say hello, and that'd be the end of it, and I wouldn't get a call back. So it made me really hungry, because I knew I had to be good enough to get the part. It was like, it was very clear that I had certain friends who were booking because of their parents, because people just loved, they were hoping the parents showed up to set. With me, it was like, oh no, Rob would not be happy if I put her in this position. She's not ready yet. I respect him too much. So it makes it hard to figure out what's next, because you're like, okay, how do I stand out now? Right? Like, I just need to work harder. I just need to have more voices. I just need to prepare for whatever moment I don't know is coming. And, it's so interesting because then you get that one audition that makes everything make sense. But before booking my first big job, I think I auditioned about 600 times and I maybe booked four or five out of 600. And so you're just starting to look around like, am I as good as I think I am? Is this a matter of my age? Is this a matter of wrong place, wrong time? Like, you start to kind of question, now what, but now I'm grateful that nobody gave me a shortcut, because I think, like I said, it made me go through those 600 to where when you get that call, you fall down to your knees. You you literally fall down to your knees. You look at the negative amount in your checking account that you've run up and you're like, finally, so long term, I've been really grateful that it went like that. But his peers, they were not playing that game. They said, we don't care to put her in position if she's your kid. If anything, it would do you a disservice for that to be how your legacy is presented.
Your mom has done an extraordinary job making sure that you have a good head on your shoulders, because not only are you the daughter of a icon, your dad is not just an actor, but he was somebody who trailblazed in his time, and because of him a lot of people got work. So those are big shoes to fill. And the fact that he works all the time, so he's not physically around you all the time. Especially growing up, he was out, he was doing whatever he was doing, whatever movie project he was doing. Your mom was the one holding down the fort. So she gets a lot of accolades for not just holding down the fort with you, but your other siblings, and the fact that all your siblings have gone to college, but you and your mother getting a master's. How difficult was that for you to make that decision to go, you know what? I don't want to go to college. I just want to be an actor.
Oh God, it didn't go well. It didn't go well. I was like, you know what I had to do? I had to ease into the gap year because I said, I knew that was not the path that I saw for my life. There was never an excitement that my friends felt, right? Like, they'd be like, when I'm in the dorm and this, and when I visited the campus, I just had this knowing, and I'm listening to them all talk, and I couldn't have felt more isolated from them. And so, they'd all just talk about how excited they were and this, and when I saw the field, and I was like, I felt none of this while visiting the schools. And I looked and I was like, this doesn't feel like it's for me, but it wasn't really optional. My mom was like, you're going to go. And so I begged for a gap year, even though I knew it was like, the goal was a gap life. The goal was never, but I was like, just 1 year, to find out who I am. And I remember I said to her, if I went to college, the day that I graduate and I walk across the stage, I will get the diploma and I will hand it to you, because it will mean nothing to me and everything to you. And I said, that's why I don't want to go. And she just kind of froze in her tracks and was like, what do I say to that? I said, I'd literally have donated 4 years for you and nothing that I wanted to actually do. And so she was like, if you don't go, then good luck. I hope you figure it out, but you're going to be paying your own bills and you're going to have to figure it out on your own. So it really made it kind of this challenge to succeed, because I knew there was no backup plan at this point. That was it.
In you not following the steps of your mother, your siblings, and you going, okay, I'm going to pursue this. What was the first thing you started doing? You're in your gap year, because now the clock is ticking. You got a year to figure this out. So when you come back to her and you say, I'm not doing that, you got to have something to back you up. Yeah. What did you start doing at that point?
So the first thing I did, people are always really surprised when I say this. I was reached out, I think BET had reached out to me, and they were doing a a tour that would go throughout the country called the Wrap It Up Tour. And it was half artists and creatives, and then half people who were living with HIV. And so we would go and speak about our experiences. It was like to talk about the dangers of the industry and then the dangers of HIV and AIDS. And so it was such an interesting thing to kind of just go straight into right after high school. But it exposed me to just so many interesting conversations and watching how artists can combine, philanthropy, how they like what it meant to be an empath in this room full of people where I was just like, I'm sad every day. I'm overwhelmed every day. There's so much information. I want to help people. I knew that there had to be something else on top of the art. Like I was like, there's so many people who have intense stories, whether it's, somebody who was intimate one time and they go, now I'm living with HIV. Here's my story. What can you learn from it? You look and you go, all it takes is kind of one decision to change your whole life, good or bad. And so it was such a wake up call for that to be right after high school. I think, it just exposed me to the real world really fast. Like it was my college, right? Like I would travel and, you're in the different hotel rooms and you have to learn how to fend for yourself and whatever. And so that was the first move. And then I just started taking auditioning seriously and I wasn't booking anything. I was not booking room after room after room. I would get great feedback. We think she's lovely. That was great, but we're going to go with a bigger name or somebody older, or it always felt like there was something that I just could not control. And so it was years of just now trying to figure out side hustles to pay my bills because my mom was like, good luck. So I was doing, I was doing headshot photography for years. That was like my main hustle. I would do photo specials for actors. And I did that all the way up until I booked the sketch show when the pandemic hit. That was like my main side hustle was photography because it was just so slow. I was just auditioning nonstop.
So you're going to take a gap year. You had gotten this record contract. What happened with the record contract? Because you got a record contract. This is not something you were like, oh yeah, I'm going to get one. You actually got one. What happened with that for you? What was the lesson you learned? What was it that you thought you were going to get? And then you realized this is not what I thought it was. Because I think a lot of times actors or artists, they have an idea of what it should be. And then the reality is, woo, a whole different party.
I basically was at the final stage of signing the deal. And it was me and the CEO of the label. And we sat across from each other at this dramatic long table. And I was 16 or 17. And he looks at me, ready to sign. And he looks deep into my eyes and he goes, do you see yourself being the next Aaliyah? And I was like, no, right? Because I didn't want to be the next anyone. I wanted to be, me. And he repeats the question. He's like, do you see yourself being the next Aaliyah? I was like, no. He asked the third time. And I knew, I was like, oh, I'm being tested right now because he's looking to replace the shoes of an artist. That's the only reason that I'm here. So he asked the third time. It's me and him in the room. And he goes, so you don't see yourself being the next Aaliyah? And I go, no. He goes, so what do you see yourself being like? I said, well, I don't know. I love jazz. I love Amy Winehouse. I love, world music. I wouldn't want to be in a box of just R&B. I just don't see myself being the next Aaliyah. And he goes, thank you so much. And I knew I was walking away from the deal in that moment. So I had worked with the label for maybe 6 to 8 months, just testing out my sound, working with producers, coming in every day after school. Like school would finish at 3:30. I'd be at the label at 5 and I'd work till 1 a.m. and go back to school at 7. And I did that for months and months. And then when it finally came down to your dreams are in front of you, I realized he didn't want to sign me. He wanted to sign the next Aaliyah. So I was like, this is not what I signed up for. And I knew that's kind of the first moment where I really experienced what it means to have like integrity, to be like, this is not the path I want. I want the advance. I want the money. I want to be in the studio. I want all of this, but I know you're always going to be trying to fit me into this box. And he made it very clear he wanted me to fit into that box. Thank you for that. And so when I walked away from it, it was back at square one. Everything that I thought was about to change in my life, done. Done.
So even though you sing,
yes,
your leaning is towards comedy. Or is it? I mean, because you sing, You have a lovely voice. What is the thing that drives Skye's creativity?
I think it's just like this, especially I think it's very difficult to have multiple talents and not know how to organize them. I think sometimes it's like, I always joke around, if you see somebody's social media and their bio says 5,000 jobs, you don't know what to take serious, right? If it says like yogi, dentist, singer, and, social analyst, you're like, but what do I respect, right? Because even if you're great at all those things, I'm not going to know what you really are great at unless I meet you and you're just this unicorn. So I think it was figuring out like, okay, you can sing, but you don't love the idea of having a record deal. Do you just keep this as a secret weapon for where if there's a part that requires singing, you go, I can do that? Or, do you make music for yourself and maybe you'll drop a project every few years for fun? But I didn't like the industry, the music industry. I thought it was really, really dark. I didn't think, financially you can do much with anything. And the hours, I didn't enjoy the hours. I didn't want to be in a studio until 3 a.m. with a bunch of men. I was like, I don't want to be here. This doesn't feel safe. And so now I think it's kind of this thing where I've gotten really lucky in my career, maybe 3 or 4 times where I got to combine singing and acting. And that was like the total unlock. I'd love to do a biopic or something that truly combines it. But as of right now, it's kind of like this tool that I just tuck away, and I don't really sing often anymore. When I do, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot. But it's just become this, secret weapon almost, because I don't focus in on it so much.
I would say to you, because you are a creator, to start looking at that because I've heard you mention doing a biopic, and I would say to you to really start looking at whose story you want to tell and go for it, because you are a creator. You are a comedian, you are a singer, but at the end of the day, you are also a creator. You create. You've been doing that since you were a kid. So just in that, and I heard you say that you like the music of the 70s,
Oh yeah.
and that you like the 3 degrees, because as I was listening to you saying that, I was thinking, what about Jody Watley? Jody Watley had an incredible career, coming out of Shalimar, a lot of drama too, and that's what makes a good biopic. Or
Yeah.
Donna Summer. And I'm only stopping here because I started at 13 in the record business. I didn't have any parent or anybody. I just walked into a radio station and ended up staying there for 5 years and learned the business, learned the good, the bad, the ugly, the miraculous, learned what it is to be an artist, and not having had in my home, there was nobody to guide me. And so going into this radio station with these people who embraced me, who parented me, they became my parents. They became the people who guided me, who said, no, you can't do that. No, yeah, you want to be an actor, that's nice, but you need a job. And so, okay, all right, that's nice, but we got to have a job. We got to be able to pay the bills. And so I understand what it is to be a kid in a grown-up business. Not just a business, but show business. To be a kid in show business, to see all the craziness, all the whole thing with Diddy, all the scandals with Diddy. He didn't invent that stuff. That stuff has been going on for years and years and years and years. I saw stuff like that when I was a kid. I mean, he may have taken it to a whole nother level, but it was there. So for you to going back to you as a teenager, you may not have started in a TV show and have to maneuver, but here you are creating your own content, being your own director and producer and writer, and then having to bring the goods to the table. I think it's very amazing. So that leads me to my question of you going from doing your own thing to now you are on Black Lady Sketch Show. And now you have to adhere to how they want it done, because you've been used to making your sketches your way, how you want to do it. What was that process like for you to have to pivot and like, oh, I got to do what they tell me to do?
Oh, there's rules now. I was like, wait, the biggest thing is, I think when you're green, you don't realize that you have to respect the taste of whoever's show it is, right? You just think comedy's comedy and I'll go in and I'll be funny, but you don't realize some people love really over the top comedy. Some people love physical comedy. Some people love dry comedy. They all have such different tastes. And so it's like, starting to adjust to, okay, let me first understand what their taste is so I can properly deliver. But I think it was really hard for me because I love really absurd, over the top characters, and there would be certain sketches that just didn't call for that. And so, the creator would be like, it's just a little too, big for this one. I think this one shouldn't really have an accent. And in my head, I'm like, but don't we want every character to be as different as possible? Don't want to, we don't want to use our own voices. We want to really switch it up. And she's like, I understand that. But for this one, I think it benefits us more to remove the accent, to remove the wig that's kind of over the top, and just let it be a human being and find the humor in that. And so it just, honestly, I think it forces you to humble yourself and get out of your ego and be like, I have to deliver because now I have bosses. This isn't, what do I get to do because I think it's funny? It's respecting that you're here because you were hired, yes, and they think you're great, but now you need to really mold in and fit in with the show. And I joined season 2, right? I joined when Quinta left. So the show had already started, and then they were like, there's a new girl. So that's always hard too. Most of the shows that I've been on have already been established, and then I joined. So I'm always like, how do we do things over here, everybody? What should I know? And so I had to learn quick because they were already in a flow as a cast. And I realized very quickly that you still have bosses who might have a different opinion than you. Even if I think it's way funnier one way, you have to respect that somebody else prefers it another way. I'm not the boss in that situation. So I got humbled very quickly once I realized there's so many people who can have a say so on how the joke is delivered.
So let's talk about how you create characters, because you are one of the few people who is very fluid in just adapting to a character, bringing that character to life, and you have honed that very well. I heard you talking about mood boards to create your character. Now, is that something that happened because you were on Black Lady Sketch Show, or was that something that you figured out beforehand?
Ooh. I think mood boards have always been something I did, but they became really important on the sketch show because I realized nobody could hop into my brain. So I'd be scrambling to describe something and they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, the bangs. And I realized I didn't have the vocabulary or the tools to describe what I was seeing inside of my head. Because most of the time, if I read a character, I can see what they look like immediately. I usually see a hair color. I'll see a hairstyle, probably a makeup style. So it was so hard to put it, to put into words because it was so visual for me. So the mood boards was a way for me to go, if you have any questions about what her hair looks like, her makeup looks like, what kind of socks she wears, what do his grills look like? So I was able to do these massive mood boards that I'd submit at the top of the season. And none of my castmates did it. They were like, girl, that is too much work. But I would submit these, 25-page PDFs that basically said, I think this is what would heighten the comedy of the character. And it'd be very specific things, like they only wear high waters with socks that have patterns. They only wear New Balances. She wears a bow tie no matter what, even if it's a white tee, she has a bow tie. And some of them would get it. And then some of them would be like, I don't understand how that makes it funnier. And I'm like, just walk with me. It's going to work. But the characters kind of will just come to me. Like I'll read something and it'll just be a line. And I'm like, this would be so funny if this woman's from Argentina. This is so much funnier if she's from Argentina. I don't know what it is. I think it's like a strange instinct that kind of kicks in when I read the words. For me, I read it and they kind of come to me. And then from that, I assign them head to toe little mannerisms, right? Whether it's they talk out the side of their mouth, or, they're always squinting, or whatever it is. I try to find ways to customize the person, because as human beings, we're so unique, right? Like, I have so many friends who don't realize they have quirks. And I'm like, how do you not realize when you lie, you bite your lip? Like, how did you not know this was a thing? I always tell people I date, I'm like, I know what you do when you lie. You have a thing. Everybody has a thing. Just don't lie, because I know when you're lying. We give so much away with our faces, and you might hold your cheek up higher when you're nervous, or so. I love to just study people and what they do, because it never runs out. Even the most regular person has quirks, so I try to assign every character like 2 or 3 quirks.
So you're very specific for those watching or listening. You are very specific in that character. Do you have a starting point? Like some actor friends of mine, their shoes are important first. Some actors, it's the wig. Some actors, and I'm talking people who do characters who or I just heard a new one. This man always starts his character with their religion. What is their religion? And from that, isn't that amazing? Like I never thought of, like, that's what he starts with, and then he starts to color in who this person is. As someone I know, it is all about how they speak first, then they form the rest of it. So I'm just curious if you have a starting point when you're creating a character.
I mean, religion's fascinating. It's always interesting to hear how people's brains work, because we're all wired so different. For me, I think it's always voice. It always is voice, and then voice goes to mouth, because I think our mouths can be utilized so many different ways with the character, that a big thing for me is like, am I stretching my mouth enough, in a season? Like, is my mouth tight? Is it huge? I just think there's so much we can do with the mouth. So, but it always starts with the voice. It always starts with the voice. And from that, like, for example, I had, a character named Lady Sheehan, and, she was British, and, she was raunchy, and she would, talk like this. And from her character developing, I was like, what can I do every time she speaks that you're like, did she just do that? And it would be this nasty armpit scratch, right? And then I was like, well, it's kind of funnier if, like, she scratches her under region as well in the middle of a combo. And so, from that, I'm just, here and here, and little quirks like that kind of come to you once you know the voice. But I think I always start with the voice. I've never thought about that. I think I always start with the voice, and then if I close my eyes, I can kind of see how I want them to look, and then that's when I have to mood board. But I always know how they sound. I don't know how they move or how they look yet, but like sound immediately. Yeah.
I love that. So you being a Virgo, you're very detailed. I mean, I'm hearing that you are very detailed in how you do. You were talking earlier about your side hustle before you started booking serious work, because you were getting other things, but before you landed a Black Lady sketch show, and before you landed The Neighborhood, you were doing a headshot for actors. What informed you that you could do headshots for actors?
It's funny, because my mom wanted me to be really great at what I did and not rely on her. She'd be like, if you want something, you have to figure out how to do it. Like, I can't give you $400 for headshots. If you want to learn how to do makeup, that's on you. If you want a fancy hairstyle, you need to learn how to do it. So I've always been really crafty. I always knew how to do full glam. I learned how to edit videos. I learned how to work a camera if I needed a photo shoot or my friends needed a shoot. And, the headshots was interesting because I realized that even if I didn't have a $40,000 camera that captures every pore, I knew how to make sure that I could take a photo that people felt like it flattered them, because I knew so much about their angles and their faces. And, it was really interesting because it became this thing where, how comfortable can I get you on camera? Because I want you to be happy with the end result. And I'd have conversations before even shooting the photos where I'm like, can you tell me something you're insecure about, on your face that you want me to be aware of? Is there anything retouching wise that you want me to just be mindful of? Is there a certain tooth or a da-da-da or a freckle that you want me to just be mindful of? And watching people's walls kind of come down as they just answered the questions, it made it a really rewarding experience, because beyond, getting $175. Which, that was my special. Two looks for 175, quite a deal. But before getting my 175, when I'd finally show them a couple photos, watching them light up and go, "Oh my God, no one's ever captured me like that." It was like, okay, I really paid attention to how you look best versus just gorgeous lighting, gorgeous framing, boom. Like what really, and I'd be so specific, I'd be like, your chin the tiniest bit this way, your eye, let's close them, then open, let's da da da. I was so aggressive with the directing because I knew I want you to love these photos, not just have HD photos. I've had bad headshots where aesthetically they did a wonderful job, but I'm like, why didn't he tell me put my chin down? Like, why did they tell me my eyebrows look like this? Like, there's so many things that it doesn't matter how fancy the photo is. If it doesn't capture your essence, it's pointless. So my biggest challenge was like, how do I capture who these people are in the most beautiful light, even if I don't have the best tools, And a lot can be fixed in retouching. You can sharpen things and you can tweak a lot. But that was like, yeah, that was my main hustle for years and years, because I realized that people felt like they were looking at themselves versus, oh man, I just wish I did something different in that photo. They're like, you really captured who I am there, So it was really rewarding and great, but I wanted to be acting. I was trying to make the best of it because I needed to pay my bills.
You
Yeah.
got to make that money to be able to do what you want to do there. And I think it's important that new actors, people who want to be in the business, understand acting is expensive when you're starting out.
Yes.
You may not see a paycheck for a couple of years. So how are you going to live, not survive, but how are you going to live financially as you are pursuing your career? Because sometimes it is that tree, that bamboo tree that you're watering and watering and watering. And it takes 6 years before we actually see the tree. And sometimes that is how acting is, or any kind of showbiz profession, be it a singer, musician. We were talking about you not going to college, but your college was exactly what you were doing. Your characters, taking photos, because when you are taking photos of another actor, that is feeding you. You're going, okay, it's that thing in the Bible that says iron sharpens iron. So as I am working on you, it's reminding me, oh, when I take that shot, I got to be mindful like that. You were getting your education in a different way. So when you got on the set of Black Lady Sketch Show, who did you start watching? Because it's got to be nerve-wracking. You're the new kid on the block. Everybody, it's like going to a new school. Everybody's already made friends. There's already tribes in different areas. That's their tribe, and then you're by yourself, and nobody's really coming to embrace you. You got in there. Who did you start to watch, like to go, oh wow, I can learn something from that. I can learn, because you seem to me like somebody who takes in everything. So you may come off like, I'm just, I'm just cute girl, I'm just here, but you are taking everything in. So who were you watching? It doesn't have to be the actors. It could have been the director or the cinematographer, but who are you zeroing in on to get, oh wow, oh that's good, I'm going to take that?
What made the show unique was when we got the scripts, we had to build the characters. There was nothing that gave a hint to who this person is. It might say shy, but like it wouldn't say Southern, it wouldn't say this. So we had to build everything. So actor wise, it kind of required me to really lock in because I had to make a different choice from everybody else. But the director, I think, was who I really focused in on, because I was like, what does directing really entail, right? Like you think and you're like, oh, telling the actors what to do, until you realize they're discussing how tight the close-up should be, until you realize that they're like, why is that hanging right there? I'd rather it hang right there. And you're like, wait, but that's set design, but that's lighting, but the director has to have a say-so in everything. So I think that was fascinating to me as I watched them build sketch by sketch, because every day was a new sketch. So you could be a cave woman one day, and then the next day you're on vacation, And so watching them navigate so many different worlds, I was like, this is fascinating because you have to be the captain, right? But as far as the actors on the show, like I said, we all had to come in so prepared that like I couldn't even look to the left or the right because I had to have a fully developed character, every day. And so it really required us to make creative choices to stand out because we were all kind of on our own creatively.
So you're doing this show, and then that show is over, and now you're going to the neighborhood, which is a whole different type of comedy. And you are again the new kid in class.
Yes.
And not only are you the new kid in class, but you're not the comedy kid in class. You are there at the pleasure of the other comedians. How do you navigate that?
I feel like after doing sketch and then sitcom, I could do anything because they're both such strict worlds as far as like understanding the formula. It was hard to go from HBO to CBS because HBO, you can improvise, you can curse, you can do whatever you want. You get a whole take to just come up with whatever you want, and it might make the final cut. But as far as sitcom, there's so many rules, right? They're very strict about the dialogue. There's no improving. So I'm coming in from, the loosey goosey world of I can say whatever cuss word I want in the middle of the sketch to if there's 3 no's and you say 2, script supervisor is going to be like, Skye, you missed a no. And you're like, oh, I didn't realize it was no, no, no. I'm so sorry about that. So not only is it stricter, but there's always somebody watching during sitcom. And so it's a really intense adjustment because there's 70, 80 people watching at all time versus a closed set where no one can even sneeze. On here, people can laugh, cough, drink something. It's like anything goes. So as an actor, I think I went into shock because I was like, not only did I join season 6, so they are a family. Okay, they have celebrated 100 episodes. They are at maybe 120 by the time I get there. So the adjustment was just like, I didn't even know sitcoms were made like this. I think there were so many things that I just couldn't even believe that was the process, but the respect for the machine, right? Because they know exactly how to get what they want, and the hours are so quick because they're like, you need to come in 100% prepared and we will be in and we will be out. But my ego, once again, I had to check because I wanted to come in and be very funny, and I'm more part of the storyline versus the jokes. There's the top 4 and Cedric the Entertainer is going to get the punchline. They're not going to go, Cedric, you just set up the joke and then she's going to shine. I understand that I am there as, a new member on the team, and I might have to sit on the bench a couple times and they might let me hit a 3 here and there, but like the stars of the show are going to hit the 3s, So I had to just step back and stay out of my ego and just be like, now what can I learn?
Mentorship. Who do you consider mentors to you?
It's so interesting because I pull so much from different people. Even one hangout, it can change my life. I think one conversation you can be like, never saw it the same. Of course, my dad mentored me, but I look at it as like him being a dad. But I guess, of course, that is, mentoring. I think when I think of the person that changed a lot of my career, it's Kim Whitley. I met her at an event and she goes, this is before I booked the sketch show. She goes, why aren't you a star yet? And I didn't know how to answer that question. I was like, I don't know. I'm auditioning right now. I don't know. She goes, do you not audition often? I said, I audition all the time. She goes, okay. So I need you to walk me through what you're doing because you should be a star by now and you're not. And I'm like, girl, I don't know what to say. So I'm like, okay, well, what do you want to know? She goes, when you walk into the room, what do you do? She goes, do you introduce yourself? I said, yeah, of course. She goes, are you shy? I go, no, not at all. She goes, okay. She goes, do you memorize your lines? I said, yes, I memorize my lines. She goes, okay. She goes, do you improvise? I go, yeah. She goes, how do you improvise? And I go, well, sometimes if there's a joke that could be funnier, I just kind of like punch up the joke. She goes, you've been pissing these people off and you have no idea. And I remember freezing. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, your job is not to make the joke funnier. You can add a funny button at the end that is separate from the joke that they created, but you're going in with a smart mouth, showing the writers where they missed what could have been funnier, you're rubbing them wrong and they think, you're coming in as a smart aleck and you're making them mad. She goes, they're not going to hire you because you're offending them. So when she said that, I was like, I started to think about how I was improvising, and I'm like, I was doing surgery on their material. I was fixing when a joke could have been funnier and it wasn't. And as great as they thought I go in front of network, I'm testing for these shows. They go, we don't want that one. We want the girl that made what we gave her as funny as possible. And so after that, I started booking more because I think that advice was unbelievable. I did not realize I was offending people because I just thought if it could be funnier, why wouldn't I make it funnier? And I don't think anybody ever gave me advice that honest that, wasn't in my family. I think that was the first time that it stopped me in my tracks. And so I think even though it was one conversation, I look at her I'm like, you've changed my whole, process. And so I'll never forget that conversation. I think Mentor, she won with just that one conversation.
That's awesome. Yeah. Kim is funny and filled with a lot of good information. Yay, yes. Kim. Yes. So you learned that. I heard you say something and I was like, ooh, this is so good. You learned how to be able to share your concerns or your grievances in a way that does not close people down. That is an art in itself. Yeah. To be able to verbalize your concern, but not make it antagonistic. Where did you learn that from?
I learned that by seeing how to not ask for what you want, by hearing the conversations when an actor would walk out of the room after they said something inappropriate and hearing how the crew reacts. You're like, well, there's what's not to do. So now I just need to tailor it to me, to how I want to deliver it. But there's two ways to say everything, right? You can go, what, did you forget the eyeliner? My eyes look sleepy. Or you can go, I tend to look sleepy on camera. You think we can add a little bit more eyeliner? You're going to get your way either way, but you just pissed off the whole makeup trailer if you go the first way, So I learned how to articulate what I needed because I realized that by being very nice, I got walked on. I got told to be quiet because I was younger. People who had 20 years on me would be like, shut up, little girl. I realized I wasn't being treated like a star on the show. And so it's really interesting because I was like, something's got to give or I'll never get what I really need in my career if I just let people punk me. But at the same time, finding a way to be respectfully assertive and going, hey, I'm really not comfortable with this as the actor. This just, it's itching me really bad. I know you said it won't bother me in an hour. I don't have an hour. You know what I mean? Like you really have to speak up for yourself because nobody else will. And I've been in shoes where my feet had blisters because I didn't want to cause a problem. I've been in makeup that I really didn't like. And now I look at the show and I'm like, oh, and I didn't realize that I could speak up. It's just the way I did it. So, now it's still a struggle, right? Because you could be in a situation where somebody tried their best and you're like, I'm miserable, but I can't go out there like this. And so I think by seeing people be divas or monsters on set, I learned from that. And I was like, I'm never going to want to leave the room and it sound like this. Mm-hmm. I never want me to come into the room and people hold their chest or they're nervous. You can always get what you want by being kind, but finding the balance between nice and kind, because nice got me nothing. Yeah. Nice got me walked over and, silenced. Kindness got me what I needed.
So what does nice look like as opposed to kind?
For me, nice was I'd let anybody do whatever they wanted because my discomfort, it was way better for me to be uncomfortable than for them to not have what they wanted. I'd rather me be miserable and not make things feel weird on set than speak up and there might be a little bit of tension. I didn't know how to deal with the tension. So I would be the trooper, right? If they're like, oh, we need to shoot 5 people in order. Skye, you'll be number 5. Even if I had somewhere to be, I'd be like, okay, yeah. I would never speak up saying, I really have somewhere to be. Is there any way I could be number 4? Is there any way I could be number 3? I just didn't know how to have those combos. And so it got me walked over all the time. I'd always be in the last place in line. I'd always get the short end of the stick because I would agree with everything, right? And then kindness is coming in and setting the tone and having those boundaries up front so that they know okay, she's a great girl, but she doesn't go for that. You know, like she's really lovely, but just because she's younger doesn't mean we can punk her. I had to set the tone on the first day of work differently, because when you come in and you're so people pleasing and so agreeable, they're like, she's not going to be a problem for the next 6 months. Versus when you come in and there's kind of a boss energy, but you're still kind about it, people go, okay, I might have, I might have assumed that she would have let us get away with that, but she's right. She needs her lunch break, like we have to take 10. So it's been like a struggle, because I think finding that balance is really hard when it's a high pressure setting, because you don't want to disappoint anyone, but then there's no medal for struggling. I'd be sitting there struggling in so many situations, suffering. There's no medal for it. I didn't win. I didn't become better because of it. I just suffered.
I love that. There is no medal for suffering. Let's do it. Let's
No,
do it.
there's
Whoa, that is good. That is so good.
yeah.
I heard you say that a couple of people that you like, which I thought was very interesting. You love Minnie Riperton and you love Maya Rudolph. You also love Lauryn Hill and Bob Marley. And I found it fascinating because you're picking family. Lauryn Hill was married to, or
Yeah.
maybe still is married to, Bob Marley's son. And
Yeah.
you are picking family members, Minnie Riperton, Maya Rudolph, even though
Yes.
they're different, they are of the same lineage. And they are also are artists who are activists in their own right, that they speak up and they speak out. And maybe sometimes they're not nice and they're not kind because they're saying what they need to say. You stated that all art should have a message. So with that, artists are the messengers. How do you see yourself as a messenger with your art?
I think when it really just comes straight down to the art versus like, oh, I'll use my art to get into this space to help people, like just when it comes to the art, what I hope I represent, especially as far as comedy, is that as a Black girl, you can be funny and smart. I think we've seen so many stereotypes. We've seen so many brilliant people dumb themselves down or do work that they have to be ashamed of. So like when people see me, I want them to be like, wow, like you can do it and still be very smart. You can do it and not have to play the stereotype. You can do it and have something to say. You can do it and be witty, because when we look at a lot of the big white male comedians, they were witty, they were quick on their toes, they were charismatic, they were sharp. They didn't have to dumb down anything. So I'm like, so I don't want to have to dumb down just to get a job. I'd rather, like, even on The Neighborhood, I play a genius. I love that. I love that they're like, oh yeah, the Black girl who is absolutely brilliant and knows how to fix cars. If nothing else, a Black girl will watch that and be like, oh, I actually love cars. I remember Courtney on The Neighborhood. She used to work in cars. So what do I represent, right? It's like, I just am like, any job that I do, I never want to have to be ashamed. And so I just want anybody who looks at me to be like, oh, okay, the message is I can be smart and it's still funny. I don't have to shuck and wow out and be extremely vulgar to get the point across. And so, but you can also have range, right? You can have characters who embody different things and show that you have the range to be able to switch things up. But as far as when people think of the work that I do, I never want them to be like, she took the culture back, man. She really took us backwards when she took that part. No, I want them to be like, Black people, we could do anything.
Your father has a saying, the worst thing you can do is die with your vision inside of you. How does that affect you?
On days when I'm really struggling to keep doing this, because I think the more I experience, the further I feel from the industry. Like I'm caring less and less, which I know is not good, but I think spiritually you see so much and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this for the next 30 years, 40 years. Like I might wrap this up in 10. I don't love what people are worshiping right now. But at the same time, I know that like if you were born with any type of vision, if you're born with any type of ideas, if you can wake up from a dream and hear a song, it's a disservice, to what's been planted inside of you to not do it. So that quote kind of forces me to continue on, because I'm like, I could move to a small town and live a great life and do photography there. I really sometimes think about just quitting it all, just because I think there's such a dark desperation in the city that turns me off. I think in the industry as a whole, you look at people willing to sell every bit of themselves for just a piece of attention. And I think because I've seen the dark side of attention, I don't care. I'm not begging for people to recognize me. I don't love the shiny part of it. And so I think that quote just reminds you that there's a responsibility to execute what you have in you. Like, there's so many ideas that I'd be disappointed in myself if I never let them come to fruition. So it's tough.
Again, we go back to you have balance. You also, because you grew up in it, you're not caught in the bling bling of it. I think that's important. I think when people come into the business and all they see is the bling bling, that they walk in desperation. First of all, when you come into this business, you have to be anchored in something spiritual. You have to be connected. So when rejection happens, when you don't get the part, when they're mean to you, sometimes you don't get the part and they're mean to you. It's bad enough you don't get the part, but now they're mean to you. Now they're saying bad things about you that aren't true. And so then how do you stand in your center? How do you breathe? How do you shake that off? What I appreciate about you is that you are good in taking your holidays. And I learned about holidays from one of my greatest mentors, that what he would do was once a month, he took a day trip somewhere in order to replenish his well, in order to refill his well, as Julia Cameron in The Artist's Way talks about. You got to replenish your well. And then every 3 months, he took a week or 2 weeks and went somewhere.
Yes.
And so I noticed that you have a similar pattern of going somewhere, taking yourself somewhere. What got you in that mindset to go, okay, I'm going to go, because you could be staying right next to your apartment, your home, your castle, going, I'm just waiting for the next role to come in.
Like I said, how my mom was like, if you want to do things, you have to pay for it. And I just didn't have the extra to travel in my 20s. I maybe did like 2 or 3 big trips in that decade, maybe 2. And so I think now that I'm like, okay, you work really hard. That's lovely. Great. You got a check. That's great. But now what? Right? Like now, all of your friends that traveled abroad for college or that would go on family trips and saw this, like you've never been to this part of the world, or you've heard about the Bahamas, but you never went, or you love the ocean. Why not go to Belize? Like I looked at myself and I was like, you work so much, but for what? For what? For the next job? Like you work so much and life is so short. And I think, I unfortunately experienced a lot of people passing in their early 30s or late 20s in my life. And we keep being like, when I'm older, and I'm like, I've seen so many people who never get older. So now I'm like, there's an urgency to experience life, because if it all ended tomorrow, okay, what, I worked a lot? Okay. And it's like, then what? I can't plan for when I'm 35 if I know some people never got there. God willing, I do. But I think it's like living in the moment, especially if I don't have any responsibilities, where I don't have a kid or I don't have a dog, I can go. So now I'm like, girl, go. And I've been trying to hold myself accountable, to be spontaneous and to try new things, because life is so short, and I think we work so hard, but never really do anything that makes us feel good about it. We just, you put in the bank and then you go back to work. No, I have to see the world. I have to try things. I think as an artist, what separates a lot of people is seeing enough in the world to be inspired on a whole nother level. And so now I'm like, if I finally have the funds to do something, when before I'd be like, we're going to Joshua Tree again. Like, that's all I did in my 20s. Now that I'm in my 30s, I'm like, okay, you can go to a birthday dinner and spend $300, or that's a $300 ticket. Or, you can buy this pair of shoes that you don't really care for, but they're designer. Or you can go to Target and then you can buy a ticket to Atlanta and go get some food at a restaurant you've been wanting to try. So I think I'm trying to just force myself to make time to enjoy. And like I said, I think a big part of it is seeing people not make it to an age where we think that's when we enjoy life, is like, do it now. If you have the time and you tell your team, you got to give me a week, babe. You got to give me a week. I've been working for 7 months. You got to give me a week, and just going and doing it if you have the resources, And I think, like I said, when I didn't have the resources, I did the best that I could. It'd be a staycation. It'd be a road trip. It'd be Las Vegas for a $90 ticket. I did what I could. But now I'm like, it'd be a disservice to myself if I didn't try more things when I had the time, and the ability to do so.
Let's talk about your mindset. How do you replenish your mindset? With you talked about, sometimes it's difficult in the business. Sometimes you see things that are not pleasant, not attractive. It doesn't feed your spirit. Yeah. How do you keep your mindset clean and steady and intentional?
Right now, I think it's been hiking. So just getting into nature. And then another thing that's been really therapeutic for me to kind of recharge is I've been taking a lot of heated workout classes, and I love that. But what I love is no one in the class knows what I do or anything about me. So like, they don't care that I'm there. They're almost a little, stank. I mean, if you've been in one of those classes, they're clicked out. But I'm okay with that because I'm like, I'm not getting any special treatment. And I think there's some actors who obsess over the special treatment. They love being put on a pedestal. They love the yes men. I have friends like that who love it. For me, it makes me feel very isolated when somebody treats me different based off of knowing what I do. So it's important to put myself in settings where nobody knows what I do and they don't care. And I think that's when I just feel grounded and feel normal. And so it's just, it's been a lot of physical stuff. A lot of like movement has kind of brought me back. And just having friends around who believe in the same things and who are not jaded by the shininess either. And sometimes somebody isn't jaded and then they experience just enough to get jaded, and that sucks. You're like, gotta let that one go. But having friends around who care about the world too, like, I can't be around somebody who only cares about their bubble. I'm like, you got to care about what's happening. You got to see this video and feel something. Like, I mean, do you care at all? So right now my circle's very small because I'm like, you got to love the world. You got to love yourself. You can't care about what I do more than what you do. I don't want you to ask about my job nonstop and not speak about yours. Like, I'd love to hear that you like your life as well, And so my sanity, it calls for a very small circle.
A mantra that you say a lot is, yes, am I having fun and am I doing a good job? Is that something that you continue to say to yourself?
Yes. I think it's always been a priority in my life to have fun. I think I was like raised to have fun, especially with a kooky dad who like loves having fun. And so I just am like, as soon as I don't enjoy this anymore at all, I can gladly walk away from it. I think I've tasted enough. I think I've seen so many beautiful things. I'm not a slave to what I do. I'm not like, when I'm 60 and I have the role of a lifetime, I'm like, it could all be over tomorrow. And I'm like, that was cool. And so, I have to be having fun, and there has to be some type of joy in it. I think when all of that goes quiet, you could get the biggest check in the world, but if you feel like your soul's off, like, I think that sometimes that's beyond repair. I think we've seen a lot of actors just kind of go over that hill where they're like, I couldn't find myself again. And I refuse, I'm like, if I'm not enjoying this even 10%, I'm out. I'm gone.
You talked about doing a biopic, and it reminded me of early on, you started imitating Beyonce, and you do a really excellent job of her. And you got to meet her. Yes. Had you been doing the character before you met her?
Oh yeah. I think because I had a similar tone, like low voice to her, I knew register wise I might be able to do it. I think it's like, when you listen to voices, you're like, who has a similar register? And her voice is so low to where I've always had just a raspier voice. And so when I was younger, I was like, I think if I just make this a little Southern and add in a couple ums, we can get there. So it was always something I do with friends. And when I started uploading the videos, I was like, this is bizarre that people enjoy it this much, because it was something I'd already kind of worn out with my circle. They were like, yeah, we've heard that many a times. But it also taught me a lesson in, like I said, being able to pick apart whose voices I think I can mimic based off of knowing my register now. It's really fun. Like I can hear somebody speak and I'm like, oh, I think I can get them down just because of where they sit. And so biopic wise, now I'm like, I mean, you said 3 Degrees. Like I said, I'm obsessed with the 70s. So I do love the idea of just like a girl group. I mean, you look at a movie like Dreamgirls and it's just, I'm fascinated with it. But yeah, Beyonce, like I said, I tired out with my community. So they were like, well, we're happy for you, girl, but we've heard it a lot.
How was it meeting her after you had imitated her?
Oh my God. I didn't bring it up. And she definitely, if she does know, she didn't say anything. But I think it was cool because I was like, all right, mannerisms wise, I picked up on a lot of this. Like, she has very specific mannerisms. I have so much respect for someone like her who's given up so much of her life to entertain people. I think that it's probably one of the most isolating things. I can't even imagine on that scale how much of you have to give. And so I'm like, wow, what does that even feel like? You look at somebody like that or Michael Jackson and you're like, you've given up everything to entertain people. So, and as a Virgo, I'm like, I just, I hope to work with her in some capacity one day, but I look and I'm like, I think there's very few creatives who have given that much to the game. Very few.
Just an idea, just a thought. When you're looking at biopics, you should also look at some of the writers, the
Ooh,
songwriters, some of the songwriters that we like.
ooh,
Valerie Simpson, um,
yes.
singer, but also a prolific songwriter. Just saying,
Ooh,
Valerie Simpson is the bomb, and
ooh.
because of her and Nick Ashford, we have incredible classic songs that ain't no mountain high enough. We got it's just on and on.
Yeah,
So just a little
that's a good
nugget
thought.
there, just a little
Yeah,
nugget. It just came to me
yeah,
because I was thinking of the 3 Degrees, and
yeah.
having been in the record business, we programmed the music. When I was 18, I came to Los Angeles to pursue acting and had the opportunity to go back and program more radio in Los Angeles. As 19, 20 years old, I was programming the number one Black radio station in,
Stop it.
yes. And so music for me of that era is in my body because I know all of it. But I would say that Valerie Simpson is a beast, and she
Okay,
definitely is somebody for you to look at because
okay.
she came in through Motown early. She
Mm,
was young, and she
okay.
just and she's still cooking. She's still
Yeah,
doing her
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
just and has a restaurant, and just she anyway, she
That's good to
I'm a
know.
big fan. I'm a big fan. No, because the 3 Degrees were part of the Philly sound, and out
Yes.
of Philly came some incredible women, including
Yeah,
Patti LaBelle was
yeah,
part of that for a while. But a lot of people, Dee Dee Sharp Gamble, and the list goes on and on.
yeah,
So
yeah,
anyway, just
yeah.
so where would you like to be in 5 years?
Still enjoying it. I think, on more of the creator side, whether it's a script or a film or just something that is like me executing my own vision. And I think I really want to just kind of go way more into film than TV. I think it's been really great to do two shows back to back, but there's something beautiful about creating a little world for 2 months and then being like, I'm out of here. I really would like to dive way deeper into film, and yeah, and just still be enjoying it, still doing projects that make me feel fulfilled and that excite me and that let me transform. I'd love to continue developing as a character actress to where people go, wow, this is opening doors for Black women who do this. I think there's so few Black women who, do films fully in character, or like a Mike Myers or a Jim Carrey. There's such a fascinating world there. So I hope to really, dip my toe into that. Yeah.
Who are some of the actors that you would like to work with?
Maya Rudolph, 100%.
Okay.
Jim Carrey, Mike Myers. I love so many of the like OG SNL, heads. I mean, I feel like years ago when I was obsessed with the show, and you'd see a Kristen Bell and you'd see Will Ferrell. But then also I'd love to do drama. I'd love to work with the greats in that space as well. I think comedy and drama, there's such a fine line, right? And so, yeah, I'm really open. I think it really is less about the actors and more if the project's amazing. I'd just be grateful to be a part of it. But yeah, Maya Rudolph's number one.
Do you write down your goals? Are you a goal setter?
I am. I don't do it enough. I will have a list, and if I haven't completed it yet, but I think I need to like refresh and really do like monthly or like a yearly versus just having this long list that I check off, I think I need to be more specific.
So you being a Virgo,
Yes.
there is a book called 12-Week Year, and it talks about condensing your goals into 12 weeks. So instead of a yearly goal list, you have your goals every 3 months. Because I'm a big goal setter. I've taught goal setting to incarcerated kids in Bible study and inner city kids. And there is something when you talk about living your dream, that it starts with your goals, right? You have a dream, and then you put it into goals form so you can achieve it. But the whole process of having goals and working on them every 3 months, you got to hit those goals, and then you keep going, that it keeps you sharp. It keeps you sharp. It keeps you like, okay. So when the business starts feeling a little tiring, like, oh, we're doing it again. No, because if you are focused on and intentional on your goals, I got to reach these in 3 months. Life changes how you perceive the industry, because it's not about the industry. It's about you making change in the industry, right? It is really, and as artists, talking about Bob Marley, talking about Maya Rudolph, it is really about how do we want to change the industry? How do we want, and as people of color, we have more power than we see ourselves with. You without you knowing, because you saw your dad do it, you were like, I could do this, and that came from somewhere. It didn't just, there are a lot of kids out there that are talented that have never thought, let me pick up a camera and let me start doing sketches, or let me pick up the guitar and put the camera on and start singing on my phone. But you saw that was possible. And so as people of color, we need to know it is possible for us not only to be in the business that we want to, but to affect change. We get to affect change. We get to say, this is how we want to do this. And if you are intentional, if you are on purpose, it will happen, because your focus is different. That's why I asked you about your mindset. A lot of times our mindset is toxic. It's not where it should be. And so then we don't believe we're good enough. We don't believe we're, listening to your story is a story of someone who is unstoppable, someone who is you know where you're supposed to be going. And that only comes because stuff was downloaded into you, and you were like, I'm doing it. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much. This was amazing. I love it.
I had so much fun. I'm so happy this worked out. It's perfect.
That's Skye Townsend. She is unstoppable. You're going to see more of her in the future. Let me know in the comments your thoughts. And while you're there, buy me a latte. And don't go anywhere, because now you're going to hear from her father how he got to be who he was, which is how she got to be who she is right now.